Imagine navigating a building where the blueprint is, well, a living organism.
Oh, that's a terrifying thought.
Right. You turn a corner expecting your familiar hallway, and instead you're staring down a dead end. Or even worse, a set of stairs that is actively deciding where it wants to drop you off today.
Yeah, completely overwriting your own destination.
Exactly. I mean, think about the building you were sitting in right now. You trust it. You trust that the doors lead where they led yesterday, and you know that the floor will remain entirely horizontal.
You take the physical stability completely for granted.
You really do. But today, we're welcoming you to the architectural nightmare that is Hogwarts Castle.
It's an absolute mess of spatial rule.
It really is.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, we are not doing a standard historical tour today. We are looking at the glitches. The source material we're diving into today, which is this massive stack of architectural analyses, historical accounts, and magical theory. It points to a fascinating, honestly terrifying reality.
Because the school has literal gaps in its logic.
Yes, mysteries that have just been completely absorbed into the daily lives of the students. Unexplained phenomena that they just, well, live with.
It is the absolute definition of spatial and structural defiance. The backdrop of our discussion today isn't a structure made of static stone.
Far from it.
Right. It is a 1,000-year-old magical environment that actively shifts. It rejects being completely mapped, and it fundamentally disobeys the laws of physics.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we are chasing for you today on this deep dive.
Oh.
Is this castle simply heavily enchanted by its creator, or has it, over 10 centuries of absorbing ambient magic, developed an actual localized form of awareness?
Is it a machine or is it an organism?
Exactly. Is it running on a billion forgotten lines of magical code, or is it alive?
That is the core tension here. And to even begin approaching that answer, we really have to examine the bones of the place, the physical structure.
Right, the stuff you can touch.
Yeah, and the most glaring anomaly there is the shifting layout. The corridors that change length, the doorways that lead to entirely new locations based on, who is standing in front of them.
And those famous, absolutely terrifying staircases.
Oh,
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to stop and really think about the mechanics of those staircases, because it is baffling.
Mechanically, it shouldn't work.
It shouldn't. If a 10-ton stone staircase physically moves from one landing to another, there should be friction.
Massive amounts of it.
Right. There should be noise, structural strain, the grinding of masonry. You feel the vibrations in your teeth. But the sources suggest enchanted maps become outdated almost the second they are drawn, which implies this isn't just physical movement.
No, it's not.
Spatial manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Like reality is bending.
Precisely. If it were mere mechanical movement, the structural integrity of the castle would have collapsed centuries ago. You can't just swing stone around like that.
So how do the sources explain it?
Well, they point toward two dominant theories for this instability. The first is intentional design by the founders.
Like they did it on purpose.
Exact. A deliberate defense mechanism, or perhaps a pedagogical tool. The idea is that by making the environment unpredictable, you force young witches and wizards to remain incredibly present.
Like forced mindfulness.
Yeah, heightening their situational awareness. You teach them through environmental friction.
I struggle with that theory. I really do.
Why is that?
Because if it's a defense mechanism meant to protect the students, why does it actively disorient the very people it is supposed to protect?
That's a fair point.
I mean, dropping an 11-year-old first-year student onto a random unlit corridor in the middle of the night doesn't sound like defense. It sounds like a massive liability.
It is a valid contradiction, which is why the second theory from our text, the accumulation of residual magic, is arguably more structurally sound.
Okay, break that down for me.
So, every spell cast within those walls over a millennium leaves a trace, a microscopic imprint of energy.
Like magical exhaust fume.
Kind of, yeah. The structure isn't consciously choosing to change its layout. It is buckling under the immense localized pressure of its own history. The magic warps the physical space the way a wooden floor warps under centuries of...
Oh, wow. So the building is essentially suffering from a 1,000-year magical water leak, and the shifting stairs are just the floorboards popping up?
That's a great analogy.
That makes it terrifying. But, okay, if the physical structure is warping under pressure, how do we explain the internal invisibleness?
The cons.
Yeah. Because the text details accounts of a low, deliberate voice traveling through the wall. A voice that wasn't echoing in the halls, but moving with directional intent through hidden conduits.
Right, the basilisk moving through the pipes.
Yes, but the sources point out an anomaly that totally upends our understanding of magic.
Clarity of the sound.
Exact. The sound traveled through solid stone without distortion, and it was only perceived by parselmouth, people who speak the snake.
Which shouldn't be physically possible.
Not at all. If I yell through a brick wall, you get a muffled echo, right?
Mostly just bass frequencies, yeah.
Right. So how does a whisper remain crystal clear through medieval masonry.
Well, ordinary acoustics dictate that sound waves degrade when passing through dent. The fact that the voice was perfectly intelligible implies the walls themselves were acting as magical
Transducers, like turning the signal into...
Exactly. The castle's structure was transmitting a specific magical frequency. The sound wasn't traveling through the air inside the pipe. The intent behind the sound was being broadcast through the stone, acting as a selective receiver for a specific genetic trait.
Oh man, it's like the castle had a closed-circuit radio frequency that only a parselmouth could tune into.
That's exactly how it functions.
So the walls are a network, not just a boundary. And that network leads directly down to the Chamber of Secrets.
The ultimate hidden space.
Right. Created by Salazar Slytherin, requiring Parseltongue to enter, and holding a massive basilisk. But looking at the sources, I just can't get past the logistics of the excavation.
The sheer volume of earth moved.
Yeah. How do you hollow out a cavern of that scale beneath a castle without the other three founders noticing? These are literal titans of magic. How did they miss the displaced earth, the noise, or the magical signature?
It is a profound logistical impossibility. To excavate a space of that magnitude undetected requires magic that isolates and nullifies not just sound, but spatial reality itself.
You'd essentially have to pause reality in that specific...
Exactly. And furthermore, the biological anomaly of the basilisk itself is staggering. How does an apex predator of that size survive for centuries without a visible, sustained food source?
That's what I was wondering. Did it hibernate?
Yeah.
Was the chamber acting as a stasis pod? Because, there aren't exactly herds of cattle wandering down there.
No, definitely not. The texts don't provide a definitive biological mechanism. Leads to the speculation that the chamber itself sustains your magic.
Like feeding it ambient magic.
Possibly. Suspending its metabolic needs entirely. But the most crucial detail the sources raise about the chamber is its architectural consistency. Unlike the rest of the constantly shifting, unpredictable castle floors above, the Chamber of Secrets layout remained permanently static.
Wait, really? Completely static.
Completely.
That is fast. If the rest of the castle is warping under the humidity of residual magic like we talked about, why is the chamber immune?
Because it operates as a time capsule of pure, uninterrupted intent.
Uninterrupted intent.
Right. It was built with a singular, highly specific purpose by a single individual, completely sealed off from the ambient magic of the student body. It resisted the accumulation of residual magic because it was essentially quarantined to go to school.
Okay, so the shifting architecture is a symptom of communal magic, and isolation breeds stability.
That seems to be the rule, yes.
But the chamber isn't the only hidden space beneath the floorboard. The texts outline this vast, deteriorating network of unmapped, subterranean hidden passages.
The ones stretching out to the village.
Yeah, some of them go for miles. And on top of that, there is the temporary repurposing of spaces, like the third-floor corridor, which was turned into a localized gauntlet to protect a specific artifact.
The Philosopher's Stone, right. The third-floor corridor demonstrates the extreme plasticity of the castle's architecture.
Plasticity? I like that.
It shows how Hogwarts can be forcefully adapted to house highly dangerous obstacles, including massive creatures and deadly botanical threat. And then, once the threat is removed...
It just goes back to normal.
Exactly. It returns to being an entirely ordinary, neutral school hallway. Spaces are shaped entirely by their temporary utility.
Wow. If the castle's physical geometry is that capable of hiding ancient beasts and miles of tunnels, how does it handle the psychology of the people inside it?
That is where it gets truly strange.
Because the most jarring anomalies in our sources aren't the moving walls. They are the spaces and tools that seem to actively read human mind. Let's talk about the Room of Requirement.
The absolute apex of spatial and psychological anomaly within the castle.
It's wild. It doesn't appear in any blueprints. It opens only if a person paces the wall with genuine specific need.
And intent. The intent is key.
Right. And it adapts entirely to the user, anticipating subconscious desires they haven't even articulated. If you need to hide, it provides a hiding spot. If you need to practice defense, it provides the tools.
It challenges our fundamental understanding of local reality. It does not operate on a fixed command like a door recognizing a password.
No, it's way more complex than that.
It interprets human emotional and practical states.
I want to dig into the physics of its storage form. The texts describe a version of this room that contains generations of lost, hidden, or discarded items.
The room of hidden things.
Right, towering mountains of furniture, books, dangerous artifacts. If the room expands indefinitely to hold centuries of junk, where exactly is that physical space located?
It's a spatial paradox.
Exactly. You cannot infinitely expand an internal room without the exterior walls of the castle bulging outward, unless is the castle folding space inward.
That is the necessary conclusion. The volume of objects clearly surpasses the physical dimensions of the corridor it occupies. Therefore, the room must occupy a pocket.
A pocket dimension just casually sitting on the 7th.
A space that exists alongside or entirely beyond the three-dimensional geometry of Hogwarts. It is anchored to the castle, but it does not reside entirely with.
So generations of desperate, terrified, or rule-breaking students casting magic in that specific hallway essentially tore a hole in space-time.
That's one way to look at it, yes.
And the castle just paved over the tear with a magical door. Because the sources point out there is no known creator. No founder claimed it.
Which heavily implies it was an emergent phenomenon.
Emergent, like it just happened naturally.
Exactly. A naturally occurring pressure valve for the complex magical environment. The friction of countless students needing a place to hide their secret eventually synthesized into a localized spatial rupture that responds to the frequency of need.
A spatial rupture born from anxiety. That is brilliant.
It really highlights how the magic interacts with human psychology.
But, okay, if the room of requirement proves the castle can interpret subconscious needs and hide massive amounts of physical space, how is it so catastrophically bad at hiding the people inside it?
Ah, you're talking about the map.
Yes, because a group of teenage students managed to completely hack its surveillance system to create the Marauder's map.
The Marauder's map is an unparalleled piece of magical engineering. It tracks true identity in real time, mapping a shifting environment flawlessly.
And completely bypassing highly advanced invisibility and transformation magic.
Right. It doesn't matter if you're invisible or disguised as an ant.
The sources raise a great point here. Why hasn't this been replicated by adult authorities or government? If 4 teenagers could invent an unfoolable tracking system, why isn't every magical security force using it?
It's a massive blind spot in magical law. It implies the map is detecting something much deeper than a physical body.
Like a soul.
Or a core magical signature. It isn't tracking light or sound, it is reading the fundamental identity. The creators managed to perfectly integrate spatial awareness with identity.
But what makes it truly anomalous is its responsive, interactive personality.
The insults.
It literally insults people who try to pry its secrets open. It doesn't just display an error message, it analyzes the person trying to break in, assesses their intent, and formulates a customized mocking response.
It reads the situation dynamic. This suggests a level of sentience, or at least a highly sophisticated artificial intelligence embedded within parts.
Speaking of artificial intelligence embedded in inanimate objects, we have to talk about the soaring hat.
A fascinating artifact.
It evaluates 11-year-old students by reading internal, unexpressed trait. And according to the text, it contains fragments of the founder's own understanding.
The hat is arguably the most consistent, self-sustaining piece of magic in the cast. Most enchantments degrade over time, but the hat has operated flawlessly for 1,000.
I really want to break down how it actually works. How does it cross-reference a millennium-old data set of founder ideologies with the developing brain of an 11-year-old?
That's the core mystery.
Is it using legitimacy, like actively reading their current thoughts? Or is it running a predictive algorithm on their potential?
It must be a synthesis of both. It accesses the surface thoughts and deepest fears of the student, but it also engages in a real-time dialogue.
Right, it talks back to them.
And it takes the student's choices into account. It is an active participant in shaping the structural hierarchy of school. It operates with a level of knowledge visible in its result. Yet the internal mechanics of its decision-making remain a black box.
We just see the output, not the processing. Well, if the castle uses the hat to organize its inhabitants and the map to track them, what do we make of the entity whose entire existence is tied solely to observing the castle?
The static population?
Yeah. The ghosts, the portraits, and the suits of armor.
The observers in the in-between.
Let's start with the ghosts. They are individuals who died, chose to remain, and now exist in a state of arrested development.
They don't age, they don't evolve.
No, they just watch the castle change around them. But what the sources highlight is their strict avoidance of discussing the actual mechanics of their existence.
They are notoriously tight-lipped about death.
And then there is the incredibly tragic lore of the Grey Lady and the Bloody Baron.
A profoundly dark chapter that permanently scarred the castle's.
For those who need a refresher, Helena Ravenclaw steals her mother's diadem, flees the country, and is tracked down by the Baron. The encounter ends in a murder-suicide.
Brutal.
And now, both of them are back at Hogwarts as ghosts. They share the same physical location for eternity, but they exist in total silence regarding their connection.
A frozen dynamic.
But my question is about the environment itself. Why does Hogwarts support such a massive, stable population of ghosts? Not every old magical building is teeming with spirits.
It's the sheer concentration of magic. At Hogwarts, it acts as an anchor. The environment actively sustains their continued existence.
So they feed off the castle.
In a way, yeah. A ghost requires energy to maintain its visual projection and interaction with the physical world. The castle, overflowing with ambient magic, provides a limitless battery for them.
A limitless battery?
They are essentially localized energy. They represent fixed points in the castle's history, completely insulated from the passage of time.
Energy sinks. I love that description.
Yeah.
And if the ghosts are energy sinks, the portraits are basically a localized, closed-circuit historical surveillance system disguised as art.
That is a very accurate, somewhat unsettling way to put it.
Well, the sources note they retain partial consciousness and memories of the deceased, but it's shaped strictly by what they were taught while the subject was alive.
They are an intermediate state of existence. They are bound entirely to the frame network.
But are they actually aware? I see it like a primitive form of AI, trained exclusively on a single person's data set. The portrait knows what the person knew, it has their mannerisms, but if you introduce a completely novel concept to it, can it learn? Or is it just a sophisticated chatbot regurgitating pre-recorded personality traits?
The sources emphasize their limitation here. They are not truly, they don't possess independent evolutionary awareness.
So they can't grow.
Exactly. They can observe, relay messages, and perform administrative roles, but their consciousness is permanently tethered to the parameters set during their creation. They observe the castle, but they cannot truly participate.
Which leaves the actual physical observation network, the moving suits of armor.
The militia.
You walk down a quiet corridor and a helmet shift. You hear metallic groans. The texts note they are placed strategically at intersections, entrances, and staircases, points of high traffic.
Ideal locations for monitoring movement and controlling spatial flow.
Right, and the speculation in the sources is wild. Are these just decorative remnants that absorb too much ambient magic and develop a twitch? Are they a passive security camera system for the headman?
Or something more active?
Or are they an active magical militia waiting for the right trigger condition? Because during times of extreme danger, their movement goes from passive adjustment to active coordinated defense.
This implies a dormant threat assessment algorithm. Their programming is highly sophisticated, reacting proportionately to the overall threat level of the castle environment.
Like an immune response waiting for an infection.
That's a perfect way to conceptualize it.
So the interior of the castle is meticulously structured. Between the portraits, the ghosts, and the armor, you cannot take a step without being observed or measured. But the moment you step outside those heavy oak doors or travel deep beneath the foundation, that structure violently gives way to the
The environments that Hogwarts acknowledges, but fundamental, the wild.
Let's look at the Forbidden Forest. The text notes that the forest actually predates the school itself. It has unmapped depths, and its physical rules are altered, like light behaves strangely, paths vanish and reappear.
It's highly volatile.
And it houses autonomous colonies of centaurs and acromantians. The school exerts zero authority over it.
None at all.
Why would the founders, who went to such lengths to create a controlled environment, build their school directly adjacent to an ancient, unmanageable wilderness? Why not clear the tree?
Because it is an ecological necessity, a boundary between absolute order and absolute chaos. By maintaining a clear distinction between the highly structured interior and the unpredictable primal conditions of the forest, the founders established a necessary tension.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the forest likely possesses its own natural accumulated magic that acts counterbalance. It is an untamed reservoir.
It's a psychological boundary for the students, too. A constant reminder that while they are mastering magic inside, magic itself is wild and lethal right outside the window.
It instills respect.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Right next to that forest, we have the Black Lake, uncharted depths, housing mer people, and the giant squid.
Ah, the squids.
This is where my mind just breaks. Normally, a giant tentacled apex predator living in a lake near a school is a catastrophic liability. Think about the insurance forms.
It'll be a nightmare.
Yet, the sources note it behaves calmly. It interacts non-aggressively with students. It acts like a friendly, unionized lifeguard. Why?
The squid's behavior contradicts every known pattern for large magic. It displays a regulated, deliberate calmness that suggests an ancient agreement or a specific enchantment.
An agreement with a squid.
Perhaps. The texts question its lifespan. Is it a single immortal creature that has inhabited the lake for centuries, or is it a lineage?
Like a royal family of squids.
Possibly. It likely serves a vital role in maintaining the lake's ecological balance, acting as a deterrent to the more dangerous elements in the deep water, keeping them away from the surface and...
So it's an ecological regulator, keeping the deep water threats down. Speaking of violent nature acting as a regulator, the Whomping Willow is fascinating. A massive, violently defensive tree planted specifically to guard a secret passage out of the school.
A brilliant piece of organic security.
But it has a physical control point, a knot on the trunk that, if pressed, completely paralyzes the tree.
It is the perfect intersection of botany and defensive warding. It is a biological organism that grows and reacts, yet it is bound by enchantments that strictly dictate its defensive parameters.
So specific.
It targets movement with lethal precision, which implies a localized perception system, but it contains a hardwired bypass switch.
A biological padlock.
That's exact.
But, okay, if the willow guards a pass out of the school, I want to talk about what is hidden deep inside the school's foundation. Section 4 of our sources highlights the hidden engine of the castle, the kitchens and the house elves.
The invisible workforce.
Located entirely underground, access via concealed entrance, a massive industrial-scale logistical operation run entirely by autonomous house elves.
It is a profound demonstration of the castle's psychological archetype. The essential support system, cooking, cleaning, the invisible labor that sustains tuition, are deliberately, completely severed from the visible narrative.
I keep asking myself, why hide it so thoroughly? Why not just have them serve the food normally?
Because it maintains the illusion of an effortless magic. It creates a psychological separation for the students between the daily reality of sustenance and the elevated pursuit of magication.
So they don't have to think about where their dinner comes from.
Exactly. The visible castle remains unburdened by mundane necessity. But the true architectural marvel is the stability of that underground.
Right. The floors above are chaotic. Stairs are moving. Walls are whispering. But the kitchens operate with absolute staggering consistency.
With no shifting layout down there.
The elves have complete autonomy in their domain, and their space doesn't shift. The foundation remains completely solid while the upper floors dance.
It compartmentalizes the mundane logistics flaw.
But how does the castle compartmentalize magic that is fundamentally dangerous to reality itself?
That is where the source material gets genuinely dark.
Let's dive into dangerous magic and altered reality, starting with the pensive, an artifact that extracts and preserves human memories, allowing users to literally walk through them in three-dimensional space.
A profound psychological tool.
The text notes it captures details the original person wasn't even consciously aware of at the time.
The pensive dissolves the barrier between subjective memory and objective history. When you view a memory, you are not experiencing the internal emotional state of the person. You are navigating a reconstruct.
I am stuck on the philosophical horror of this.
How so?
Well, if I have a conversation in a room and I completely ignore the pattern on the wallpaper, but later I put that memory in the pensives and I can walk over and examine the wallpaper, is the pensive an omniscient, objective camera capturing reality, or is it an algorithm filling in the blanks based on fragments of data?
That is the crux of the danger. Does it capture absolute reality, or does it extrapolate? And the sources highlight a much more terrifying vulnerability.
Which is?
What happens if a memory is magically modified before it goes into The device will render the altered fake memory as a flawless, navigable, three-dimensional truth. It strips the memory of its unreliability and presents an illusion as empirical evidence.
It weaponizes subjective reality.
Exact.
Almost as effectively as the mirror of Arius.
Another incredibly dangerous artifact.
It shows your deepest, most desperate desires. No known origin, no known creator. It just constructs a unified, coherent reality that traps the viewer. It doesn't fulfill the need. It paralyzes the person with obsession.
The mirror is an anomaly because its magic is entirely inward focused. Most magical artifacts exert influence on the physical world.
Right. They float things or unlock doors.
Exact. The mirror accesses the deepest layers of the subconscious, bypasses logical surface thought, and reconstructs an impossibly detailed illusion. The fact that previous authorities buried it deep within the castle indicates they fully understood its psychological lethality.
It induces absolute stagnation.
Complete paralysis of will.
Stagnation of the mind. But if we want to talk about breaking reality, we have to talk about time turners.
Temporal mechanics.
Moving backward in time within the same physical timeline. A closed loop with extreme, heavily enforced restrictions against being seen by your past self.
What's fascinating here is the paradox of temporal mechanics within a spatial environment. Hogwarts is a linear space. The architecture exists in a forward-moving flow of time.
Like everywhere else.
Right. Yet the castle is capable of absorbing these temporal loops without fracturing. Cause and effect happens simultaneously within its walls.
It's mind-bending.
If a student travels back 3 hours to change an event, their action was already integrated in the timeline they just...
My brain short circuits with closed-loop time travel. I mean, how does the physical space of a classroom hold two versions of the same person from different points in the timeline without catastrophic magical feedback?
It implies the castle's ambient magic acts as a temporal buffer.
Absorbing the paradox.
Yes, but the true danger is kept highly classified. The governing bodies enforce the rules, but we don't definitively know the consequence of breaking them. If you interact with your past self, does the timeline collapse? Does the individual suffer psychological destruction?
They just tell you bad things happen.
The rules are rigidly followed, but the true mechanics of the disaster are hidden.
Castle just tolerates the paradox.
Yeah.
Just like it tolerates the vanishing cabinet.
A massive security failure.
A damaged, forgotten piece of furniture linked to a shady shop completely outside the school grounds. The texts note that once it was repaired, it established a spatial linkage that bypassed all of the castle's legendary ancient defense.
It reveals the ultimate fatal flaw in the castle's security architecture.
Yeah.
Dormant. Yes. The enchantments protecting Hogwarts are fiercely outward-faced. They are designed to repel external sieges, dark magic, and unauthorized entry from the perimeter.
A giant firewall.
Exact. But they are completely blind to internal vulnerabilities created by forgotten objects. The cabinet utilized a spatial wormhole, a direct point-to-point linkage that entirely circumvented the outer firewall.
It is the ultimate backdoor exploit, and it makes you wonder, in a castle that hides centuries of junk in pocket dimensions, how many other dormant, catastrophic objects are just sitting in dusty corridors waiting for someone to react?
It is a massive blind spot.
And sometimes the dangerous magic isn't even an object, it's a location, the Shrieking Shack.
A fascinating case study.
Built simply to safely contain a student's dangerous physical transformations via a secret passage. But the horrific sounds it produced created a haunted reputation that outlived its actual use by decades.
The Shrieking Shack is a brilliant example of how residual trauma creates lasting lore and potentially lasting magic.
How so?
The original functional purpose of the building was entirely obscured by the local village. It was replaced by a narrative of supernatural terror based purely on acoustic evidence of suffering.
Think about that. If every time you felt immense pain or stress, the walls of the room absorbed a tiny fraction of that energy, what would that room feel like to walk into a decade later?
The source suggests the building might actually retain residual magical imprints from those events, contributing to its permanent aura of unease.
The trauma becomes structured.
Perfectly stated.
We see how dangerous magic hides in plain sight or gets disguised as a local ghost store. But sometimes the castle doesn't just passively absorb magic. Sometimes it reacts.
It exerts a will.
Let's talk about the overarching will and the unbroken curse, starting with the defense against the dark arts teaching.
The most localized, persistent, and adaptable anomaly in the entire...
It is notoriously unstable. No teacher lasts more than a single year. But the terrifying part is the variety of the exits. They don't all get fired.
No, the methods vary wildly.
Some resign by choice, some suffer catastrophic accidents, some are incapacitated by external events. It's never the same twice.
The prevailing theory is a targeted curse placed by a rejected applicant decades. However, if we analyze that through magical theory, it defies all known mechanics of a curse.
Because curses fade.
Most curses require an energy source, maintenance, or proximity to sustain themselves. For a curse to maintain itself uninterrupted for half a century, adapting its methodology every single year to ensure a different outcome.
Even utilizing entirely mundane bureaucratic means like a resignation letter.
Right. It represents a self-sustaining algorithm of staggering complexity.
It's an intelligent curse. It evaluates the current teacher, calculates the path of least resistance to remove them, and executes it without a caster ever maintaining the spell.
It operates independently of its creator.
And speaking of authorities tightly managing reality, look at the restricted section of the library.
A highly contentious area.
Books that physically react, scream, or manipulate the mind of the reader. Access is heavily gated. But I think the real mystery isn't the dangerous books sitting on those shelves.
The real mystery is the vacuum.
Yes, it is what has been quietly and deliberately...
Exact. The sources point out that we have no complete historical archive of the library. We don't know what knowledge was deemed so profoundly dangerous or subversive that the authorities entirely erased it.
The books that didn't even make it to the restricted section.
Right. It illustrates that the accessible knowledge at Hogwarts is not an objective repository of all magical understanding. It is a meticulously curated collection managed by the ideological perspectives of those in power.
The erasure of that knowledge is invisible because the absence leaves no structural evidence.
We don't know what we don't.
The castle hides its physical flaws, and the administration hides its intellectual flaw. But when the outside world gets truly lethal, the castle drops the illusion, steps up.
The transition from school to fortress.
Look at the First Wizarding War. The texts describe Hogwarts remaining an impenetrable bubble of stability and routine, while the entire country collapsed into terror outside.
It relied on absolute protective enchantments and controlled information. The defenses were so absolute that the geopolitical conflict effectively bounced off the perimeter wards.
It just maintained a strict artificial distinction between the war outside and the academic sanctuary inside.
Yes.
But then, decades later, during the Battle of Hogwarts, the bubble popped and the castle woke up.
The dormant defense protocols activated.
The stone statues literally marched off their pedestals. Pathways intentionally shifted to funnel attackers into choke point, and heavy doors locked themselves to shield retreating students.
It became an active participant.
It wasn't just a physical battlefield where people were casting spells at each other. The battlefield itself was actively fighting on one side, like an immune system attacking a virus.
The immune system analogy is incredibly precise here. The debate within our sources centers on whether these responses were the result of deliberate, localized spells cast by the defending teacher's moment,
It seems impossible.
or an emergent, spontaneous response from the castle's own absorbed consciousness.
I am totally convinced it was emergent. The coordination required to animate hundreds of statues and manipulate the spatial geometry of the corridors simultaneously is too vast for a few teachers to manage while dodging curses.
The logistical strain would be insurmountable.
The castle's internal magic synchronized to repel the infection. And the most telling detail, once the battle ended, the castle reverted to normal.
It powered down.
The statues went back to their alcoves.
Yeah.
The doors unlocked. It suggests an incredible resilience and a temporary activation mode under extreme threat.
Which brings us directly to the climax of our analysis, the grand unifying theory of the deep dive.
How does a building composed of stone and mortar learn to defend itself?
We must look at the intersection of two critical factors outlined: residual magic and lost knowledge.
I want to break down residual magic first. The sources propose that every single spell, charm, and hex ever cast over 1,000 years leaves a microscopic imprint.
As we discussed earlier.
Right. These imprints pool together. They accumulate, eventually interacting with the founder's original ancient enchantment.
Consider the sheer ecological pressure of that reality.
Huh.
Millions of spells cast by thousands of developing magical minds over 10 centuries, that residue does not evaporate.
It seeps into the masonry.
It builds a localized atmosphere of raw potential energy. The shifting staircases, the spontaneous generation of the room of requirement, the emergent defense protocols during the siege, none of this necessarily implies a conscious thinking mind.
Oh, so it's not a ghost.
No, it is the heavy, accumulated weight of a million spells reacting ecologically to environmental stimuli. The castle is a pressure cooker of ambient.
So it's not a ghost haunting a machine. The machine is just overflowing with so much raw energy that it acts alive.
A perfect distinction.
And that theory leads perfectly into the second fact, the lost knowledge of the founder. The texts emphasize that the four founders possessed an understanding of magic that simply cannot be replicated by modern wizards.
The foundational arc.
Between their ideological schisms and the passage of 1,000 years, the source code of Hogwarts has been entirely.
The methodologies used to integrate shifting architecture, tether a pocket dimension to a physical hallway, to embed fragments of consciousness into a sorting hat. That knowledge was either deliberately concealed or lost to attrition.
We observe the profound results of their engineering, but the process is entirely inaccessible to the modern world.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? It means modern students, the teachers, and even the headmaster are essentially end users operating a massive ancient supercomputer where the admin passwords were lost centuries ago.
They are completely locked out of the back end.
They know how to use it. They know how to prompt the portraits. They know what floor the moving stairs usually connect to, but they have absolutely no idea why any of it actually worked.
They are navigating a legacy system. They adapt to its glitches rather than repairing them because they lack the foundational understanding to alter the code.
So, after analyzing this entire stack of sources, from the shifting stones to the time travel paradox, is Hogwarts aware?
The conclusion the texts point to is staggering.
It doesn't communicate with traditional thought. It doesn't have a voice, but it responds. It adapts to pressure. It maintains a fragile, chaotic balance.
It exists in this incredible, unmapped gray area between a highly complex, degraded machine and a living, breathing organism.
It is an environment that fundamentally defies binary categorization. It shapes the psychological and magical development of its inhabitants just as fiercely as they shape its architecture.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
What an incredible journey this source material provides. We've looked at staircases that purposefully trick you, devices that create closed temporal loops, an entire industrial engine hidden underground, and a castle that acts as an aggressive immune system.
The layers of complexity are endless.
It proves that Hogwarts is not merely a static backdrop for a magical education. It is an active, unpredictable participant in every single event that happens within its perimeter.
And that realization leads to a final vital thought for you, the listener, to consider.
What's that?
If Hogwarts is constantly absorbing the residual magic of everyone inside it, if it accumulates the emotional and magical imprints of thousands of students over centuries, then the castle isn't just changing.
The students are changing the castle.
Yes. The students, with every tiny misplaced charm, every moment of sheer terror, every burst of triumph, are slowly, permanently altering the fundamental nature of the castle.
Which brings it right back to you. If you were to walk those shifting halls, what kind of permanent, invisible imprint would your magic leave behind in the stone?
A fascinating question.
Would your anxiety contribute to a shifting staircase? Would your need feed the expansion of a hidden pocket dimension? It makes you look at the mundane buildings you walk into every day a little differently, doesn't it?
You never know what they're absorbing.
You expect a static blueprint, but maybe if you leave enough of an imprint, the building starts reacting. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the things that seem ordinary, keep looking for the hidden conduits in the walls, and we will catch you next time.